And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another AFLW round review. We are through 8 rounds of footy. And man, does the season go way, way too fast for me. But you know what? I've been going since March. I don't mind it getting closer and closer to the end, but this has been fantastic. We have gotten through round 8 of the footy. We were back to a regular round of footy, no more condensed period. Whew, thank God. Let's introduce co-host extraordinaire, the man, the myth, the legend that is the Crowjack podcast. We have Pete hopping on. Peter, great to see you again, sir.
Johnny, thank you so much, and thank you to all the listeners as well. And really looking forward to this. I think it's been 6 months since I've last been on. So, yeah, really looking forward to it.
Well, I had you on for the men's. I thought I know Peter is a huge advocate of AFLW, especially with
Mhm.
his beloved Crows being quite the fantastic club that they are when it comes to AFLW and their record of at least I think it is 3 cups at least right now sitting in their
That's
trophy
right.
cabinet there for the Adelaide Crows, one of the best teams in the AFLW competition so far in its short history. So had to have him on to talk AFLW because I know he is a huge AFLW lover. So let's hop right
Mm.
into it, sir. We are through round 8. Some interesting results this round. Just your thoughts on round 8 as a whole.
Oh, look, there was a lot that happened. I mean, look, obviously, the focus for myself will be on the Crows Collingwood game itself and the springing of the water main in the middle of the ground. How does that happen? But anyway, but I don't know. I feel like even as a league, there was a little bit of thank God the compressed fixture is now
Mhm.
over, that we can now recoup and be a normal league itself. I almost feel like the air came out of some of the games as well, which is a little bit unfortunate too. I know, really surprised by Essendon getting absolutely trounced by North Melbourne. I knew North Melbourne were going to win that one, but at the same time, to see a result like that, was a fair whack. But otherwise, no, I'm not particularly surprised by many of the results itself. Um, but yeah, I guess we're only 2 rounds away from finals, Donny, and there's a lot that can happen in that time too, mate.
Yep, there's still some fluctuation in this ladder. There are a
Mm.
few teams that are locked in. We know that for sure. We know we've got some teams locked in, but there's still some intrigue come making the finals, especially considering a club that has been towards the top of the ladder sees themselves just outside by percentage, but playing some really, really good football and another impressive win this weekend. So let's jump right into the round. We start off in Thursday
Mm.
night footy and a shocker if you would have told me this a few weeks ago, as the Western Bulldogs get a nice win at Icon Park by 33, 61-28, this young group of doggies have gotten after it, including South Australian Elaine Grigg, who finds herself as the rising star of this particular round. But I sit here and I go, are Carlton coming off that elating win over Fremantle out in the West? And I think they
Mhm.
had what I call the lull after a big win as the Doggies nip them by 33. An impressive game by the Doggies. Happy to see this young Doggies team getting some success.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, well, it's such a long trip to go over with, and if I'm looking at Carlton got one less day of a break as well compared to the Bulldogs, where the Bulldogs got to stay home, and then even compared to and I say round before that, or week, or whatever the fuck they were calling it at the time too. There's a fair compression of games within that point. I wasn't particularly surprised by this, and that's why I sort of said at the top, I wasn't really expecting Carlton to win this one, if at all, given the extra time of the break. I think that factors a lot more into the AFL women's side compared to the men's, purely because, uh, these amazing women still work as well. So, they've still got jobs to go back to and everything else like that. So, factoring that in, I wasn't particularly surprised. Sorry to deflate your run up there, Tony, but yeah, wasn't really surprised by this one, mate.
It doesn't surprise me because again, I think the doggies started to kind of find it, and I think a little bit of after earlier in the year when they had the Essendon conversation where literally the
Mm,
doggies just threw four, almost three behind the ball just to kind of keep themselves alive. I kind of liked that the coaching was questioned. I didn't mind it. Again, I think it's one of the things that
yeah,
I think as analysts sometimes is that I think we kind of kid glove some of these girls sometimes is that we're afraid to criticize them. I don't mind being critical of coaching. I don't mind being critical of players. I just don't like when it gets personal or when
yeah.
it goes over the top. Like, I don't mind being critical. Like, I don't like the game plan. I think the game plan was too conservative. I think the coaching staff really screwed the players. That's a perfectly okay. But going after the players personally, or just going over the top with your critique, that's when I think the line is drawn. But I actually liked what they were doing. They were getting after it. You're starting to see some of these youngsters that they drafted with a ton of talent. Christy Lee Western Turner, Elaine Grigg, who I loved at Sample W level. And I think she has
Mm.
just literally stepped into that Dougie side and has done exactly what she did at Sample W level, and I think she's going to be an absolute ripper. She just there's some things that she'll need to work on. Again, she's young, she has plenty of time to do that, but she's shown
Mm.
why she was a top draft pick. I'm loving the doggies. I feel bad for Carlton because they've been so inconsistent. They've been Jekyll, they've been Hyde. They'll win a
Oh,
few
yeah, yeah,
they'll win
agreed.
a few games this season that they're maybe not expected to, and then they'll drop a game like this, which I understand the travel. I understand all that. But talent wise and skill wise, you should have beat this Dougie's team, and they just didn't do it. And I think that's the most frustrating part for this Carlton side, which after a few bits of the drama that we'll talk a little bit later is sounds like this Carlton team has been a mess, especially due to the ignorance that is their former coach. I won't go too far into that right now.
Hmm.
Maybe a little bit later off a tweet that he had that I think he got royally lambasted over. So let's go. Let's
Yeah.
jump to Friday. Let's jump to Friday Night Footy. We'll reel that in and save that for a little bit later.
Mm.
So reel that in. I know this will be like bile coming out of Peter's mouth, but you got to compliment it. The Port Adelaide Power get a win over St Kilda, 47-32. This young, talented group is starting to click, and it's so much fun. Seeing Matilda Schultz continue to show why she was one of the best young rucks coming up. I think she's in it with a crack to potentially be an All-Australian. I think one of the best chances for the rising star this year, Miss Shanae Goody, had herself a game in this one. But it's just good to see this Port Adelaide side getting up and about. I'm a little disappointed in the Saints. I thought the Saints experience, I think, would really help them get over the line. But again, Port got after it. Their pressure has been outstanding the second half of the season.
Yeah, look, Donny, I'm a shallow man. And look, for the listeners out there, head over to the Project Podcast and please like and subscribe there. You can see all the good work that we do over there, and that includes needling Port Adelaide at every opportunity possible. And we did our Garden Stakes Guernsey, which is a rip-off of their Prison Bars Guernsey. And essentially, I just want to say I will compliment Port Adelaide. You have rebuilt Alberton Oval to turn it into your little hub itself. You had issues with how high the light fixtures could be and other stuff like that. And you've put in temporary stands for fans that don't exist. So it's like going back to Footy Park back in the day. However, I will say I'm glad that they have finally said no to the big China money from 2017. So they had an opportunity to have a AFLW franchise at the same time as Crows, and they said no. We will go on our junket every year to Shanghai, and then COVID hit, and that all went to nothing. And then they decided, oh, we should have an AFL women's team. Who knew? Um, Now that whole time, I enjoyed emphatically ribbing Port for not engaging the fairer sex and having a squad. And in that time, the Adelaide Crows won 3 premierships to their none. Simple as that. However, they played a very good brand on that was Friday night. Yeah.
Mhm.
And look, I've got to give a shout out as well to a friend of the pod, Sam Tugwell from 5AA, is a personal friend of mine, and he does the commentary for 5AA for all the home A for women's games alongside Jenny Williams, who's a sister of Mark Williams. They call it a great game. I actually really enjoy listening to them too. And The insight that they were talking about with the Port Adelaide's, ball movement and everything else like that, it just sounded like they were playing really. I was out on Friday night, but I listened to some of the game itself, and sounded like they were really cracking into. Personally, I'm surprised that Port didn't run away with this one by more, and that makes me feel nauseous saying that, honestly. But that's okay. They'll shit the bed in final, so it doesn't matter.
It'll be interesting. They're young, so making finals is the accomplishment, in my personal opinion. Whether they do anything or not will be icing on the cake again. Their pressure was manic. They were everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
St. Kilda could not move 10 feet without getting three Port Adelaide players right in their face. The pressure was absolutely manic. It was a fun game to watch. I did thoroughly enjoy watching this game. Like I said, a little disappointed in St. Kilda. Again, they're finding a way to struggle at probably the worst possible time with this team still trying to make finals. That a struggling game against a young side
Mm.
is probably something that they were not expecting. So
I mean,
definitely
the
a
other
lot.
thing, Johnny, as well, is that Port had an 8 day break and
Mhm.
stayed at home.
Yep,
A 7 or 8 day break.
that helps too. Yep.
Yeah, compared to a 5 day break. Um, there's a disparity there.
Oh
And
yeah.
okay, this is going to happen in every fixture, but this is another example as to why the compressed fixture is fucked and it can
Mm,
fuck off in the bin.
I
Pardon the
complete.
French. I'm sorry for saying compressed.
You were I don't mind it. Like I said, we'll get to the burning questions and definitely address that because I went on a rant last week about this whole thing. I thought the compressed fixture was did not do anything positive for the competition,
Mm,
but we'll talk about that later. So we'll jump over to Kinetic Stadium in Frankston in Victoria as the Hawks continue their red hot form. Again, as I've said a couple of times, Hawk ball has now taken over the women's part when as the Hawks get another impressive 37-point win, 61-24. I heard rumblings about this team being very, very good come the preseason, especially when they smashed Sydney in the early part of the season. And I went on the limb saying that I think Hawks make finals this year. And I feel like
mm.
I was vindicated a little bit because this Hawks team looks absolutely fantastic. They're definitely fun to watch. They have taken on the men's bravado. Whether they'll go very far in finals or not will be the million-dollar question. But again, for a young Hawks team that is only 3 seasons in, this was impressive and fun to watch. And
Mm.
unfortunately, for my brethren, for my Sydney side brethren, unfortunately, Sydney side sisters, unfortunately, GWS again, another season where what could have been, what should have been, it just never really materializes.
Yeah, look, I saw the Hawks live when they played the Crows at Unley Oval, and I actually do think that that was a eye-opening game for the Hawks squad. And the reason I say that was the Crows were just able to match and then go more intensely and put more pressure on the ball than the Hawks did. There were some key parts of that game, and they let some things off the hook. It was perfect additions, that sort of thing. I'm talking about a game previously in the season, but I feel like since that point, the Hawks have really come on. And I did not see this game. However, watching GWS's lack of pressure when we played them last week was quite concerning, honestly. Like I was actually really surprised at how lukewarm they were. And I mean, the weird thing is as well, and I'm just looking at this too. I'm looking at AFLWstats.com and they've grouped things as round seven. And I just noticed just then GWS Giants were beaten by Adelaide. And then at the start of the round as well, and this will get into your rant as well, St Kilda beat the Giants at Frankston Oval. So apparently they played twice in one round, you know what I mean? But that goes
Mhm.
to the compressed side of things. But they also had, shortened breaks, that sort of thing. I'll just say that again and again. But yeah, I agree. GWS off the boil, not surprising. I'm sure you're not taking any mirth in that whatsoever, are you, Donny?
It's been very interesting how some people got on Scott Gowans at the start of last year saying that what he said was wrong because GWS is one of the starter clubs. Well, I mean, if we're being 100% honest, all all four of the new expansion sides from this last one, Essendon, Sydney, Hawthorn, Port Adelaide, right now, both seasons have finished
You're
higher
doing
than
good.
GWS in both years. So if that doesn't tell you that what Scott Gowen said was true, I don't know what
Mm.
is. Again, I, I'm weird about this when it comes to, especially for the women's. I don't want GWS to play horribly. I want them to play better. I think it's great for the competition if we don't have
Is
teams.
it great for the competition though, Donny?
I mean, it depends on who you talk to.
No, no, I'm not saying that because they're your hated rivals up the Para River, but I mean that more in the sense of, and this is opening Pandora's box, but did we expand too quickly? That sort of thing. That did that dilute these
I mean,
bona fide expansion clubs?
I
Because
mean,
Gold Coast is in the same
no, I get
predicament
it.
too.
No, well, Gold Coast's biggest issue is they had 10 players
They
out the
beat you
door, 10
guys.
players
So
out the door,
yeah, well,
10 players out the door from last year's team that made finals that all kind of dispersed themselves amongst other teams, which is one of the reasons why Gold Coast has struggled this year,
mm.
for sure. Did they expand too early? Many people could say yes because we were less than 10 seasons in. The only issue was is that you could probably make that argument for any time that you do expand by
Oh
four
yeah, yeah, I
teams,
agree. I agree.
just because of the
There's
fact
never
that
a perfect time.
exactly. Like I kind of like I'm one of those like you almost kind of have to pardon the term here, rip the proverbial band-aid off and just go with it. Like
Yeah.
you're going to these first 3, 4, 5 years are going to just be they're going to be absolutely whirly because there is so much fluctuation right now. Again, we still haven't hit the prime number of players when it comes to the draft yet. We still haven't done that. This draft coming up this year, from what I'm hearing, and I've talked a couple of times with Pete Williams of Rookie Me Central, this could be the first super draft in AFLW. Like there's 20, 30, 40 players that all could be AFLW players now. That's how good
Mm.
some of these players are. So I honestly like I get the people that argue that did we explain it too early. But as I kind of said, I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect time. Sometimes you just kind of have
Mm.
to rip the band-aid off and take it. GWS, I feel more of this is the club and the list management continuing to find ways to bugger this team up. They fired a coach because literally that coach literally said, Corey Staunton, you're our offense. And
Yeah.
that's literally GWS's issues for 3 seasons there for a while that if Cora Staunton didn't score, GWS didn't win. Now Cora Staunton's retired. They brought in Batisconi. He's done well, but the issue they run into is they've kind of become Zarley Goldsworthy centric. If
Hmm.
Zarley Goldsworthy isn't kicking goals, GWS doesn't go very far. Have they had injuries? Yes. Everybody's had injuries. Like it's one of those. I feel bad for GWS because they're in this purgatory. I don't know how they're going to get out of it because being in New South Wales, you're not going to get those marquee caliber talents. Now, with this year's national draft instead of state-based draft, the possibilities are a little bit better because you're going to have that ability to draft the best player from the country to your team this year
Mm.
at the spot that you're going to get. It isn't, well, we can only draft players from New South Wales or the few Queenslander or Victorian girls that decide that they want to nominate for New South Wales. Because then it was a really weird draft because you did have that moment where you're like, well, technically this person should have been drafted, but they nominated Victoria, so GWS can't draft them. Well, why don't we draft
Donny,
them?
Donny,
Well,
I've got a question. I've got a
shoot.
question. Are you going on this tangent to avoid talking about the next game?
No, actually, let's jump to the next game. I actually again I will say this, okay? I'm happy for the Suns they got a win,
Mm.
okay? I never want to see a season where the team doesn't get a win, okay? I will say that. Does it suck that this is the third time that the Swans have lost by less than a goal in the last 8 minutes of the game? Yes. But the thing I look at it too is that, and again, this is maybe positive, glass half full Donnie here. This Sydney side is scrappy as all get out. They don't have their best player. They don't have their second best player. They probably don't even have their third best player. So for them to compete in a game where their best ruck, their best midfielder, and their best forward are all gone, and to only lose by four and to have the lead with 2 minutes left and for Jack DePie to literally with a little bit of brilliance in that fourth quarter with that ruck snap for goal and
Mm.
it finds it
Yeah.
through. Does it suck? Yes, it absolutely sucks. But I will talk about this all day. I'm proud of the fight that Sydney had with it. I'm happy that GWS got a win. I love seeing Charlie Rowbottom play. It was fun to see Charlie Rowbottom and
Mhm.
Tanya Kennedy get after each other. That was fun. I the same thing with Jazzy Garner and Taz and Tanya Smith the week before and Tanya Kennedy the week before, seeing Claudia Whitford back playing her best footy like she did the previous season was absolutely fantastic. Tara Bohanna, one of the best forwards in the competition, seeing her and Brianna Tarrant going back and forth was a lot of fun. I think Brianna Tarrant's been one of the best defenders in
Mm.
the competition this year, and not just because she's a friend of the pod. I think she's been magnificent down back for them seeing Privatelli go up and make marks, seeing Cynthia Hamilton step in and make an impact when she did, seeing Sophia Hurley, one of the early high draft picks that Sydney got, play really, really well again, seeing Sarah Grundon and Holly Cooper, a couple of youngsters that are brought in for Sydney, play well despite the loss. There's a lot of positives for me on both sides. I think Gold Coast played the game that they needed to. Are they kicking themselves that they probably should have won this game by more instead of winning it late? Absolutely.
Mm.
They were playing a wounded Sydney side in a perfect situation where you had two big forwards and a smaller statured defensive line. They probably should have won by more, if I'm being honest with you. But again, this Gold Coast Sunside, they did what they needed to do. Hats off to you, ladies. Jack DePie, absolutely fantastic finish, just absolutely gutted for the Sydney girls because they did again, just like they did against Jill, just like they did against the Western Bulldogs, just like they did against Essendon. It just fell short when they needed something, they just couldn't pull it off. So, no, I have no problem talking about this game. So, Pete, did you get a chance to see this game?
Nah.
That's why you're like, Donnie, take it over. I did not see this game at all.
No, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to apologize because I was like, oh God, Donnie, he's riffing about this Wolfland Cheetah. And I'll look at the next one. I'm just like, that's why. Yeah, no, but turns out, no, Donnie on the pulse again, as always.
Hey,
But
the game started at 11:05 my time. I had my energy drink. I was sitting there watching the game, cussing up a storm when Sydney didn't do something right. Trust me.
yeah.
Again, I'm full on. I can be full on Nuffy and then be full on analytical black hat regular Coach Donnie when it comes to the podcast. So again,
Yeah, there's, I have I know I've discussed this last time, but I have a sense of empathy for yourself that I'm not a born and bred Arkansas Razorback fan, born into it thanks to my beautiful wife.
mhm.
However, nothing worse than watching college game day here at 11 p.m. and trying to get into it. And then, the Arkansas Oklahoma State game started at 2 a.m. and I was very inebriated. And I got to halftime, patted my dog, and I'm just like, we got this in the bag. And then I wake up, it's like 39-38 and double overtime. I'm like, oh, we lost. That's just another Sunday morning for me. So I
Mhm.
appreciate how you feel,
Oh,
but energy drinks at 11. Oh, man, that's brave, man. Like,
they don't affect me as much. It's more of a placebo for me. It's one of those. But it was like I said, I enjoyed the game. What was it, the best round of what is the best brand of footy? Absolutely not. Like it was a little bit wet weather, so there was fumbles, but the tackling pressure was manic.
That's what you want to see, don't
Oh
you?
yeah,
You want to
oh yeah.
see the pressure. You want to see, the players gathering around the ball and at least cracking in. And you don't want to see, keeping off that sort of thing. Anyway,
hmm Yeah,
yeah.
well, I said the same thing the previous week with North Melbourne. I thought Sydney's pressure was pretty good. Now, did North Melbourne have some free chains of uncontested footy? Absolutely, but that's also because they're one of the best teams in
Donny,
the
Donny,
competition.
you went to North Hobart Oval, mate. That's why you lost. Every team, unless you're North and Hawthorn, chalk it up as an L. Like
Hmm.
it's just simple as
Well,
move on.
I was pretty sure of that I was pretty sure in that one, considering, like I said, no Laura Gardner, no Ali Morfitt, no Chloe Malloy
Mm,
facing Jazz Garner, Kate Sheilor, and the laundry list that is North Melbourne. So even Scott Gowans had to admit that he put that team together, so he knew everything that there is to know about that team, and they still played as impressively as they did. So we will
mhm.
jump off that. I don't, like I said, take Red Hat Donnie off. Back to it. We'll go to what some would consider a shocker, but this didn't shock me again. Melbourne finds a way to get another W at Casey Fields, taking down the Richmond Tigers by 13,
Fucking
51
Casey
38.
Field.
The crazy part about this is that as a competition, you got to look and you go, uh-oh, Melbourne's finding their groove, maybe at the right time.
I don't know about that one.
That's four in a
Uh,
row.
yeah, but look, you beat the Crows by 2 points, 16 to 14 at Nordo. That means nothing. Even if we won that one, that still means nothing. I'm sorry, but I don't read too much into this one itself. I mean, Richmond had more scoring shots than we're just spraying it, and that's because it's at Casey Fields. That place sucks. So the fact that they won, honestly, it's this is fool's gold. This is like Oregon being ranked number one. You know they're going to shit the bed eventually. Simple as that. Shout out to college football fans that may be listening. You just know it's not going to work. It's like Arkansas being ranked number three in 2011. Yeah, no, it's been pretty shit since that point. So I don't read anything into this whatsoever, but I'm sure Donnie's broken this down with his razor sharp analysis.
Again, this is one of those. It's a Richmond side that I think on their day can be quite deadly,
Yeah,
especially
agreed.
Mon
Yeah.
Conti. Ellie McKenzie is having her best season now that she's healthy. Is the biggest thing
Mm.
there. Their midfield
But
has
this
been
is why I mentioned
dangerous.
about the scoring shots and everything else like that. I look at that. You've got 13 scoring shots to 11. Is that right? Yep, 13 scoring shots
Yep.
to 11. It's as simple as that. More, bad kicking's bad footy.
Mhm.
So that's why I don't read too much into the result itself. Could that mean more pressure that they were spreading out to Richmond more with their set shots, that sort of thing? Most likely. I did not see the game. However, Casey Fields sucks. And the fact that Melbourne won there means fuck all. Simple as that.
You got to take any advantage that you can get for sure. Casey Fields has definitely been
Yes.
one that Melbourne has taken advantage of that particular ground. So we'll jump out to Sullivan Logistics Stadium out in Perth in the Western Derby, however you say it. I'm sorry, Western Australians that are listening to it. Whichever one is correct, please follow that one. As the Fremantle Dockers stay undefeated in the Derby as they get the win by 23, 35 to 12. Daisy Pierce is getting kind of is being brought back to reality a little bit with her West Coast Eagles again, but the Dockers bounce back after a tough loss to Carlton at home with a nice, impressive win. Some of their additions with Aisling McCarthy, surprisingly, for a team that was Anya Tig Central ever since Anya Tig has left,
Mm.
they found more avenues to goal, and it's been impressive to watch.
Yeah, and Leaderville Oval is a very difficult oval to play out. Can get quite windy as well. I'm surprised that West Coast almost got the dodo there with they got that goal in the end. In the end, that's something we call it on the podcast. If someone gets 0 goal 6 like Eric Hitwood most weeks as well, that's called the dodo because it's very rare, unless you're Eric Hitwood. However, uh, look, just seeing Leaderville Oval, very difficult oval to play at. What was the name of the sponsor for that one there, Donnie? You said before.
Sullivan Logistics Stadium is what it's
Ah, just
marked out
rolls
as.
off the tongue, rolls off the
Yep,
tongue, doesn't it?
exactly.
Yeah. I'll stick with Leaderville.
But they also have Mineral Resources Park as well
That's
that they play at too.
the old MRP. Yes, yes, the famed hallowed grounds where fuck all has happened. But look, um, I look at West Coast as a club itself, and I'm incorporating the AFL men's and AFL women's into this too. That is a club that is just I'm always curious about. So much cash ready to spend, and they are just constantly kneecapped by the AFL, by the AFL saying, "We understand you've got a shit ton of money, but you can't spend it. So we're not going to do the NBA thing where you pay like a soft tax or anything else like that, like what they do. No, no, no. You just got to keep that money there. And Don Pike, former Crows coach, now CEO, very smart businessman, has gone over there. And I think of him more as a fund manager now. That's all he's doing. He's just managing a shit ton of money. And they can't spend it on, the AFL women's or the AFL men's side because can't do it. It'll be interesting to see what happens there long term with West Coast. But I'm not surprised at all. Like you said, they've really opened up with the Frio's uh, avenues to goal. It's good to finally see a side that knows how to do forward 50 entries. I really wish the Crows just across the board would do that. That's something that we do well. We don't have culture, and forward 50 entries we suck. It's just chaos ball. That's the Crows' way since 1991. That's all we do. So,
At least
yeah,
you're
didn't see the game
consistent.
if you can't tell. Yeah, exactly.
At
Consistently
least you're
crap. That's
consistent.
what
At least you keep their consistency for sure, which is
Mm,
like I said, it's been
exactly.
wonderful to see. Like I said, Ebony and Antonio being back is nice for the Fremantle Dockers. Like I said, Aisling McCarthy jumping from the West Coast Eagles over to Fremantle had to
Mm.
give her a little bit of a chuckle as she beats her old side in this particular game. The Dockers look like an interesting team. I'll be fascinated to keep an eye on them as we go forward. If they make finals, what do they do? Because they are this kind of wild card because they are kind of off and on sometimes in
Mm.
certain games. So it'll be fun to keep an eye on that. So we have to go to the other shocker of the round as the Geelong Cats at home get a win over the Brisbane Lions 47-37. The former premiers go down. And unfortunately, this is where the length of season really, really irritates me because this is a Cats team just beat the defending premiers and are most likely not going to make finals.
Well, that's because they suck, Donny. Like,
Can't
I
suck
mean,
too bad when you beat the defending premiers and one of the better teams in the league.
yeah, well, Port beat Sydney by 99 points in the regular season. That meant fuck all, didn't it? So it doesn't really
Very
matter,
true.
mate.
Good point.
Like, I mean, the point here is, look, first off, Continue Park, it's a shitty stadium. I call that the pork barreling stadium because it's in a federal marginal seat. So that there's, if you just want to win the electorate, just build another wing or something else like that to GMHBA Stadium, and you're just guaranteed to win. That place sucks to play at. Credit to Geelong as a club itself; they have a really good culture and they have a good way of funneling money through Cotton On and everything, all their other deals to get all sorts of players to their club. However, um, you know, if you're gonna, you should actually maybe play better for the rest of the games as well, and not just. I mean, look, I look at that result itself. Maybe Brisbane were just dialing it in just a little bit as well. There's not much else that you can sort of garner from that. I mean, they won the Q clash, so maybe they were celebrating and flying high from that one too. Who knows, Tommy? But but seriously, look, Geelong itself, you can take a finals off. It's okay. Like just one of the sides, just chill. All right,
Well,
it's okay.
here's the thing. Like I said, the part that's frustrating for me is that this is a Cats team. Like I said, if you look at their fixture this year, they
Mm,
literally were not handed anything
agreed.
when it comes to a fixture that is beneficial for them. Like I'll just pull it up really quickly. Okay,
Yeah, I was
so
just
they
looking through it
so
right
so
now.
they so
Yeah.
they played Melbourne again at the start of the season. Again, Melbourne was considered to be a top four side. Okay, their first four games: Melbourne, North, Carlton, Gold Coast. Okay, not exactly the toughest, but you also look at it, you had two teams most people expected to be in the finals. A Gold Coast team that some people, I'm still trying to figure out why, had in the finals. Well, I never had them close to the finals. I had them as bottom four side personally. And
Mm,
Carlton again is Jekyll and Hyde. Then you go to it, they play Hawthorn, they play Fremantle, they play Sydney, they play Richmond, they play Brisbane, and they still have Adelaide and West Coast as their final two teams. That is a brutal, brutal schedule considering you've played
mm,
the top four sides in the competition, all four of them. Hawthorn, Adelaide, Brisbane, North. You've played all four. And you play Fremantle. Like I'll look at just looking go through it. I'll pull up the ladder here really quickly. I think they've played most of the teams in the yep, except for Essendon, Port Adelaide. They played the top five sides of the top six sides of the competition: North, Hawthorn, Adelaide, Brisbane, Richmond, and Fremantle. The top six sides in the competition, they have played all six.
But don't forget they got that draw too, the elusive draw that you need. And from memory, I remember that Geelong Carlton game had hideous conditions. Wasn't it like there was a
Hmm.
hailstorm that went
Yep,
through
I
from
remember
memory?
that one. Yep,
I mean, they were lucky to score 5 points there. Like, it was crazy.
exactly. Yep. And
But
they
yeah.
and then if you go through it of their seven games, not Melbourne is ninth. So they've played
Mm.
six of the top 18 of the top nine teams in the competition. Like it
I
is
mean,
in or seven of the top nine teams in the competition in
as weird
their
as it
seven.
sounds, if they win out though, their percentage is actually quite beneficial to them too. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
looking at the ladder now, you've got the Bulldogs that are in 13th with a percentage of 59.8, and Geelong, who are in 12th with 14 points, Western Bulldogs 12, and a percentage of 103.4. How the fuck did that happen? That just that's never happened.
Well,
So
because they a lot of their games have been close, and
yeah, exactly.
their wins have been close wins. Their losses, they haven't been blown out. Like the Doggies' biggest issue with their percentages, plain and simply, is the fact that they've been blown out in
Mm,
three of their
mhm,
losses. That doesn't help. But it's like when Geelong lose, they tend to lose in close games. Even their wins, like I said, only a 10-point win here. And again, I agree with you. Are Brisbane kind of shutting some horses down and getting ready for finals? Definitely possibility, especially
mhm,
considering they're in, North's in, Hawthorn's in, and Adelaide are in already. When it comes to points, they're in. There's no way they're going to fall out. Everybody after fifth, we're kind of looking at, you're still kind of looking at it going, you got to get one of the final two to
mm.
be sure that you're in. Again, the Cats, like I said, you look if you look at their fixture, that is the reason they're not in, is because they've had one of the toughest fixtures in all of the AFLW this year, especially considering they lost some games early in the season that I think they're probably kicking themselves that they probably should have won, but fell just a little bit short. So
Yeah, but it's their own fucking fault, Donny. Anyway.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, let's get a longer fixture and maybe that particular situation may not
Oh yeah,
happen.
and
But
compress it more. Yeah, that'll help, and and make the
you know,
umpires more shit. Yeah,
again,
that'll
there's
help too.
I'll I said it last week. I'll tell you later. I said my utopian thought. I know it'll never happen, but I think it would fix everything, but it won't. So we'll jump to Windy Hill as North Melbourne again had a cracking win over Essendon. Unfortunately, Essendon did not show up. Bonnie too good with their only goal as they score 7 points in a
Mm.
58-7 smashing North again. All absolutely humming right now, still undefeated and looking quite in the catbird seat to be the minor premiers this season.
Now I have a theory here, Donny. I
Okay.
think the size of your banner is inversely proportional to how shit you're going to play. Now, shout out to the Marmalade Boys. You know, they do some good work. And
They do.
for Bonnie Two Goods game that she played, that made an obscenely large banner.
I noticed that. I saw that.
And they shit the bed. So therefore, I would argue that banners need to fuck off in the bin. Uh, yeah, that's a hill that I will die on. By the way, banners are the most cringeworthy thing, in my opinion. I hate them with a passion. When West Coast moved to their little inflator eagle thing they ran out of, and did the whole Miami Hurricanes, just spray the
Hmm.
CO2 canisters. Happy fucking days. You know what? Just got on with it instead of this gathering around and running through some crepe paper. And
And then
please.
having to throw it off and then having to pick
Yeah,
it
exactly. And then,
up or having it
someone's
break because of the wind.
playing their 50 or 100 games and they bring their kid through and their kid gets clotheslined and then, they've got a phobia of crepe paper for the rest of their life and they talk to the psychologist down the road and then the AFL will have to pay for all their funding for their psychology appointments. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass here. But at the same time, banners can fuck off. And that's the reason why Essendon lost. And also, it's at Windy Hill as well, which I hate that place with a passion. That is one of that is a dump of a ground. I don't know if you've ever been, you've come to Australia, haven't you, Tony?
I have
Sorry?
not. It's on
No.
my bucket list. Like I said, I think I've slowly been inheriting friends to the point where I could probably couch surf across most of
Yeah.
the country.
Now, here's a recommendation. Don't go to some of these shitty VFL stadiums. They suck. Like Victoria Park at Collingwood. They used to set fire to rubbish up until the mid 90s. You know why? They just couldn't be bothered picking it up. Like it's a legitimate thing. And you can tell when you go there, there are still stains from where they just set fire to things many, many moons ago. It sucks. And Windy Hill sucks and Essendon sucks. And that's why they got trounced. And shout out to North Melbourne as well. I'm really looking forward to the upcoming game that we're playing against them. It is gonna be great.
That's gonna be a game of the that is going to be one of the games of the round for sure. This actually the first two games of this next round, I'm thoroughly
Mm,
looking forward to both of them. I think they're going to be absolute belters. So let's jump to the
mm,
game that I know you had your eyes fully on and I know gave you nothing but a smile, sir, as your beloved Adelaide Crows get a big 43-point win over Collingwood, 56-13. But the big thing that I got to talk about, and I know is with you being a nurse practitioner,
mm.
I got to ask this. We did it off mic, but I want you to tell me the reaction. Chelsea Randall looked like she went through a 10-round heavyweight fight, but was only punched on the left side of her face.
Yes, yes. What a better way. She fought against a someone who's a northpaw, not a southpaw, I guess is the boxing terms there. But yeah, Chelsea Randall, a fair amount of subcutaneous emphysema that's happening and that's swelling into that face for a rather innocuous bump. She is, I can say this hand on heart about Chelsea Randall, probably in my top five all-time ever Crows players, male and female, genuinely trailblazer, fantastic captain. Now, we talked a bit about this on our pod last night too. Head over to Project, please like and subscribe. But also listen to Donny's as well. You got this far, that's going to be part of it. But seriously, I think true warrior and a really upstanding role model too. My beautiful 4-year-old daughter uh, does not like the AFL men's side whatsoever. She only likes the women's side too. And I've taken her to some of the men's games where she has said, "Why aren't the girls playing?" and then just loses interest completely. I think that's a sign of a generational change, and that's why I think the AFL are shitting the bed in fucking up the AFL women's. But we can get into that later. But look, to go back to Chelsea Randall, an absolute warrior, and got on with it too. There's I've seen some people who have said, well, she should have been off the ground longer for a concussion protocol. She was off for 15 minutes and they did everything right under the concussion protocol guidelines, unlike Port in a certain showdown a year and a half ago. But the other thing too, mate, I think Ebony Marinoff, name the fucking name the Brownlow after her, the Lady Brownlow, the I don't know what they should call it. It really should be the Aaron Phillips medal, in my opinion. But that's not me trying to be biased whatsoever. I actually think Aaron Phillips, she's a true trailblazer for women's sports in
Mhm.
Australia. But Ebony Marinoff, one of just amazing. There's no other way to describe it. Just she has smashed every possible expectation that people have had of her as a player and then some. And I can say, like, I'm so fucking proud of this squad because they just get on with it. They have a great culture. They have a great belief. They have a great squad itself. They have great off-field staff too. And I'll give a shout out to a few of them, including Della Griffith, who does the comms for them too. Fantastic person and really is pushing hard to advocate them as a squad, as an extension of uh, the Adelaide Football Club itself. Um, you know, I'm really proud of them, and it always shits me to tears to see the AFL fuck up their hard work. But anyway, there was a water mains that blew on the middle of the oval. I don't know if they've heard of an isolation valve. I don't know. Maybe just turn that off. Who fucking knew? And then they're just throwing sand on it. Somehow the playing surface was better than Marvel Stadium still. But yeah, look, I think Collingwood, they only had 1 point for 2.5 quarters from memory.
Yep.
And
Was until the fourth, I think, believe Lauren
yeah,
Butler
of the
was the
fourth,
one that
sorry.
kicked the one goal for them. So
Yeah. And I think was it, did they kick a goal after the siren? I think, or am I thinking of the GWS game? I'm probably getting them confused.
I think
Um,
it's well, pull up the timeline here because I haven't had a chance. Yep, they did. No, Caitlin
uh,
Gould did. Yes.
Oh yeah, Goldie. Sorry,
Yeah,
Caitlin Gould
Gould
as
did,
well
but Brittany,
has
Britt Benici kicked one mid fourth quarter. That was the other.
yeah,
That was the other one because
that's it.
Lauren Butler had their first, and then Britt Benici. They both were kicked in the second half.
Yeah, and
Uh,
look, I think our defense
Actually, both in the
is
fourth quarter. Now that I look at it, Lauren
there. You go.
Butler, minute 45 into the fourth quarter, and 11:47, Britt Benici puts their second in, and that's it for the day. So.
We took our foot off the gas because well, fuck it, we're great. As simple as that. But look, um, I don't, I can't speak highly enough of them, honestly. And yeah, I crush all over them all the time in a platonic way. But seriously, I'm so fucking proud of that squad too, and some of the most fantastic people on there too. So
Mhm.
yeah, from an analysis point of view, we just fucking smoked them. Fantastic. Anyway, next.
Collingwood's been one of those again. They just for somewhere this new season they've went through the headaches, the baby
Mm,
headaches of a new coach. That some teams can jump right off the bat and play with under a new coach really well. But this Collingwood team, plus it doesn't help. They've had some injury issues. I know Bree Davies been in and out. I know she had a concussion in this game, left it. So unfortunately she'll be out for the next game, and they've had to go on to train on players because of little niggle injuries that
mm,
players haven't been able to. So Collingwood's one of those that they're kind of where I think, unfortunately, as the season goes on, they're where that we kind of expected them to be because of all the issues that they've had to deal with. But the Crows, they're just such a good professional outfit. I mean, like I said, when you've got the two-headed monster of Ebony Marinoff and Hatchard, and now that Chelsea Randall can basically be moved anywhere where the coaching staff believes that they need help because she can play anywhere on the ground. And when you get Caitlin Gould kicking 3 goals in this game and being an absolute monster, this
mm.
is a Crows side again. They're just so professional. They're just so good. They just get it done when
We
they need
plug
to.
and play.
Yep.
Isn't that fucking great? We're like,
They are next woman inside this year, and
hell yeah.
they've actually done quite well at that. So,
We're like
alrighty,
Georgia
sir.
football, but we probably don't pay as much, and we have less speeding tickets too.
Mm,
Yeah. Anyway,
$20 million only goes so far, right? I'm sorry, college football. We got to stop doing this now.
yes,
We're having fun though. So let's we've hinted at it a couple of times, and I thought originally I had a different question here, but I thought bugger it, let's do it. You and me are both very avid women's footy fans. We've both
hmm
had our soapbox moments on your podcast, on my podcast. I've heard yours, I've heard mine. I've told you mine several times. What the heck is going wrong with AFL House running the competition? And this is just me going off of it. Every time I think they can't bugger this shit up anymore, they find new ways to do it, sir. Just, I mean, I have never seen a more incompetent way of handling it. And again, I get it. Okay. This competition is going to go through some growing pains because they're trying to expand it, but they have done, I mean, this is literally the bare minimum that you possibly can do and how they're handling it. And they're telling us that it's so great. I'm sorry, both for on the compressed fixture had some of the lowest scoring over the last 2 or 3 years, and scoring had been trending up for the previous 3 or 4 seasons. So you can't tell me that. These girls look tired, they look annoyed, they look extremely frustrated because they're getting more and more abuse from knuckle dragging absolute muppets online because all that the AFL House has done is set them up to fail.
Okay, I need to run it because seriously, this is something that I
Soapbox.
get very, very, very mad about. Now, um, we know about the previous. I don't want to say that she was the AFLW commissioner or the AFLW CEO in Nicole Livingston because I would call her more the puppet itself. And when she stepped down, I can't remember who, and I don't want to attribute it to the wrong person, but someone went on a huge multi-tweet rant about the lack of input or insight whatsoever and the stale leadership that she brought in. And if I look at the growth of women's sport in Australia. You look at, and I think we spoke about this last time about the Matildas and the World Cup last year, and even the Women's Big Bash League and the cricket, the Women's NRL, which is fucking fantastic, genuinely,
Mm-hmm.
and they do a great job of it. How the fuck are we shitting the bed with this? How are we being so bad at this? It doesn't make any fucking sense. I got my daughter who loves the team because it's all she's grown up with. You now have a generation of fans that are growing up with this, and not just 4-year-olds as well. There are older people as well that finally are engaged with this. Yeah, you're going to get your knuckle dragger dickheads who are going to be talking about it. But I'm going to just very quickly talk about a rant that I put up on the project page. Please like and subscribe at project. But I'm just going to read it out verbatim, and I want you to hear me out on this. All right.
Sure.
The universal hatred of the way the AFL have bastardized the AFL women's schedule proves a few things. One, people give a shit about AFL women's tick.
Mm-hmm.
Two, people give a shit about player welfare. Three, people are progressively embarrassed yet not surprised how the AFL completely managed to kill any momentum AFL women had over the last 3 years. The compressed schedule sucks. It's confusing. It's unnecessary. It puts pressure on logistics that isn't required. It's demeaning to the league at large. Ultimately, the AFL is getting in the way of the AFL women's, and they couldn't care less about growing this fundamentally great league if they tried. And where's the AFL Players Association with this? Like, they're just completely quiet again about this. And it's only, half the fucking sport itself. I don't honestly feel like Gil McLaughlin, I think you know how we were talking about before. There's no perfect time to expand the league. There's no perfect time to start a league. Let's be honest. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're now 7, 8 years in, but we're not aligned with the feeder competitions. SANFL Women's runs at a completely different time, but they've stayed at the same time from memory, I think. They haven't changed or deviated. Correct
Mm-hmm.
me if I'm wrong there, Donnie.
Yep.
So
They've stayed that March through October or March through. I'm not trying to think of when they when the grand
yeah,
final
it's
was
it's
this year.
it's
Yep.
the first half of the year.
It's the
Yeah,
early part of the
yeah.
year during the same time as AFL men's.
Yeah. And what do the AFL do? They don't come together to, come to some sort of corroboree and just basically hash it out. When's the best time for everyone to align it? No, they decide on this hodgepodge end of year thing. And look, I said it on our pod with the lead up to the AFL women's season starting. The men's squad decided to completely shit the bed and just drop Josh Rochelle for the last round. And that just sucked all the media air out for the lead up to the AFL women's side, which I honestly do think they could win a fourth premiership unless the umpires get in the way and they like doing that. However, there's no momentum. And I feel like the poor club, like my Adelaide Crows, are having to push a lot of that momentum itself without any help from the AFL house itself. I think it smells of virtue signaling that AFL house have done, that all they wanted to do was just bring in this league and just think it's the golden goose that'll just keep laying, the golden eggs, that sort of thing. And it'll just keep going. You've actually got to feed the fucking goose. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not that hard. And you've got to actually foster it. You've got to do something. And yeah, okay, they've done their, nice, comms package with all their woofy fonts and other shit like that, which you can't read properly. But seriously, I feel like the way it's run and the way it's so inconsistent is genuinely an insult to these amazing players and the amazing people behind, working off field and everything else like that. It's an insult to people like yourself and myself who do a lot of amateur, podcast work and everything, because we're massive proponents of this too. We've got multiple co-hosts that we have on the project as well that get equally pissed off about this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of fans that are engaged, but they're getting progressively disillusioned. And the problem with that is that it gets to a point where people start looking elsewhere. They can spend their money elsewhere. They don't have to go to games. They don't have to engage as much. So it's almost like the AFL are riding, the meme of the kid riding the bike, he sticks the stick in
Mm-hmm.
and, he flops over. That's what they're doing. They're fucking it up completely. Just give us some fucking consistency. It's not that hard. And get rid of this fucking compressed rounds. Doing a fucking head in. Anyway, I'm fucking mad. But it seriously pisses me off as well. And it's like
Hmm.
10:23 at night, and I'm mad. I tell you, Donnie, I can't yell too much because my daughter's asleep next door, but I'm
Completely get
fucking
it.
mad. Yeah.
No, I'm 100% with you. I know the meme is the meme is taking that particular meme is taking on a fun political part over here. Is I know that with a FEMA, I'm not trying to make a joke, but literally I've seen this.
Yeah, I do.
I've seen
Yeah.
this one all the time. It's like Helene comes through and the kid riding the bike, and the kid's supposed to be Republicans, and he's like, we need help with Helene. And then it shows the
Mm.
kid sticking the stick into the bike and rolling over and then screaming, Democrats fault. Like that's how ridiculous, like literally for
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
it's AFL House going, we love AFLW, stab the stick into the bike and then go, darn you fans. Like that's the issue that I
So
like, it
true, man.
literally is it. Like I've went on this rant so many times, and it really I really should just record it and replay it. AFL House continues to show that they see the AFLW will be a novelty until they pull their heads out of their ass. That's just the way it is. You are a novel. This is a novelty league, and I don't agree with that because I think there's some absolutely outstanding footy players that are
Mhm.
incredibly good human beings that play this game. This is not a novelty league. These are professionals, super elite athletes. But the issue is they are continuing to be shown to be playing in an amateur, pathetic league run by an absolute clown show that is the AFL House. They literally, it is like they, it's hard to explain, but it's like they point to it, it's like, look, we done this. But really, they don't care. It's
Mhm.
almost, it's a publicity stunt. Like, look
Yep.
what we did. Look what we did. But then that's
S-
it. They don't put any effort into it. It's like they just half-ass everything. And again, I understand there is no perfect time for the sport. And like I said, I said it last week in the podcast. I said, honestly, the utopian thing, and again, this will never happen, but this would be the only way it would work perfectly, is decide, is the men's season going to go first or second? Because once you decide, it's very easy. Each league plays 18 games. That's
mm,
it. No more, no less in the home and away. 18. You play every team once. That's 16. You play one team twice. That's your rival. So for you in Adelaide, you'd play Port twice. You get your two
mm,
showdowns. Sydney would get their Sydney Derby or Battle of the Bridge, whatever people want to call it, twice. Collingwood would get Carleton. Hawthorn would get Geelong. Essendon would get Western Bulldogs or whoever. Okay. Then you do your finals. Then the other season goes. So if the men start in March,
mm,
it ends in early July or maybe even early August. And then the women's competition. And it's the same thing. 18 games, finals, all done. You don't interrupt cricket. You can play games for the women in bigger stadiums because you wouldn't have to worry about the cricket taking over during their season. So the MCG would be a possibility. Adelaide Oval would be a possibility. The GABA would be a
mm.
possibility. They're never going to do that because they look at it and they go, well, the men has 100 years and that's our moneymaker. So let's play 26 games of AFL
Let
men.
me I've got a proposal, Donny,
Shoot.
that I've just thought of, not that I just thought about, but I said on our pod, I reckon
Hmm.
3 weeks ago. Hear me out.
Shoot.
AFL reserves, right? For every single AFL team, full stop. No SANFL, no quaffle, bloody waffle, whatever it is. Okay. It's all AFL reserves. You go, let's say if it's Adelaide is playing, I don't know, Sydney. Okay. In Sydney, all three games happen at the same time. Not at the same time, but they're sort of happening in sequential order. And
Hmm.
the reason I say that, yes, there are logistical issues and there will be games that will be played at the same time. But you're not going to fucking believe this, Donny. But I've heard in the NFL that they have a thing called NFL Sunday and they play the games at the same time, allegedly. Like, who knew? And it goes across multiple broadcast networks, that sort of thing, because those broadcast networks are selling the package of the NFL and they fight to broadcast in a better way. But at the same time, for the logistics of the broadcasters too, it's in one spot. You know, your three games, you know, back to back to back. The visiting squad, yeah, you've got to fly out more people, but you just fly it out all in one hit. Everyone travels at the same time. All the logistics are there. From a cost point of view, it's actually cheaper to do this as well, if you really think about it, because it saves on flights and everything else like that. It just goes out at the same time. And yeah, you're basically going to be transporting half the team, but that's going to be happening every second week. Would that be an advantage to Victorian teams? Probably a bit too much as well. So we'll make a couple of those fuckers redundant. I reckon St Kilda can fuck off to Tasmania. But at the same time, this is the sort of thing that I feel like it's very backwards the way Australian sports thinks when it comes to this sort of thing. We've got to be more dynamic and streamlined. And I do think we have to be better for making a product that is easier for the broadcasters to show. Because I think of, I speak with ESPN Arkansas every week, right, on their radio show, that sort of thing. Probably do that once or twice a week. More to rip on Max Fletcher, honestly, the son of Dustin Fletcher, because I'm an arsehole. But at the same time, they have said to me off mic, they find it very hard to watch the game because they've got no fucking idea what's going on. Like, and unless you, and I don't know about yourself, Donnie, like, you know, falling in love with the team, with the game itself and everything, but trying to figure out what the fuck is happening, what the interpretations are, and how it can change in such a way. And it's not broadcast friendly either. This is a part that I feel like the AFL house itself are stagnating, and it's going to lead. I think compare it to cricket as well. Cricket to a certain extent has stagnated, and Big Bash League it's not packaged well, and that has not helped. Like Test cricket is Test cricket, that's a separate thing. But I really do think that AFL House have a lot to answer for. Now I've got a quick pop quiz for yourself. Ready?
Okay.
Who is the current general manager of AFL Women's? Don't Google it.
I have absolutely no clue.
It was Nicole Livingston.
I know it's Nicole. They hired some business lady. I can't even remember. I can't even
Oh
remember her
yeah.
name. And I remember one of the first things when it first she said something right off the bat. I can't even remember what her. I can't. I have
So
no.
it's
I
Emma
have
Moore.
no.
You're right. Business
More.
background.
Okay.
She's from NAB, National Australia Bank. I don't know
Yep.
why NAB 20 years ago they went from National Australia Bank to NAB, and they're a bank. Like, come on. But anyway,
Quicker to
uh,
say.
yeah, Emma Moore. Have you heard anything out of her since April?
I would have to look. She's probably made quotes, but I've intentionally probably missed them
but
just because.
but
Just
more in the sense
because.
of I've not heard her in press conferences, in you know anything else like that of any magnitude whatsoever. At least with Nicole Livingston, I would hear her occasionally, even on
Mhm.
5AA Drive Time Sports, that sort of
I
thing. You
think
know,
Laura Kane has kind of taken that on. Unfortunately, Laura Kane is occasionally set for gaffes, and occasionally she's thrown. I know the AFLW season she had a couple of gaffes. The AFL
Mm,
season she had a couple of gaffes that I think probably wouldn't have happened if she just
yeah.
stomped
But
on
the other
them.
thing too, right, is Nicole Livingston quit in November, and Emma Moore didn't get into the role until April.
Hmm.
So for 6 months, we were rudderless again.
Hmm.
Does that not show a massive degree of we don't give a shit about Eunice from AFL House to the
Again,
AFL Women's?
like I said, it's the novelty act. We did to appease
Yes.
we did to appease part of the the fan bases is on that particular side. Now,
Yeah.
I want to go back, just rewind just the tiniest bit. And as much as I absolutely love your thought process because it would save the club some money, my worry is if you play curtain raisers for these women's side, you basically will keep them where they are currently. They will
I agree.
always be
Yep.
seen,
I know.
they will always be seen as the subservient thing, not even a comp, to the men's. It's a little bit like the issue we're running into up here with the WNBA and the NBA, because the WNBA, unfortunately, is they're continuing to run at a loss despite some of the things that we've seen this year with some with the huge increase due to this year's rookie class, including, again, I've said it numerous times, Caitlin Clark has been the phenomenon that really has changed
And
a
which
lot of
university
things.
did she go to,
The University
Donnie?
of Iowa. I wonder why.
Okay, you got that one.
But again, the issue that they run into is that they sit there and they want certain they sit there and they're subservient to the NBA because they can't at this present point they're not making enough financial revenue to be able to pay their bills, so the NBA has to subsidize it, which is kind of the thing. And that's what I worry about with the AFLW is that it is going to continue to have to be subsidized by the AFL if it is designated as a curtain raiser. So that's why when the people are like, well, let's just play them as curtain raisers, and then you can support the men and the women. Again, what people seem to forget is that the men's competition and the women's competition is a completely different vibe. The fan bases are different. Do I want more
Mm.
men to support the women's game? Yes. Do I want toxic men supporting these? No. And as we've
I
seen
don't want
this
toxic
last
men at the men's game anyway because
I I'm
they're fucking
100%
assholes. So
the toxic fan culture sometimes is the one thing that does annoy me a little bit is that there's a lot of people that feel that just because they pay some money for a membership or just because they're a fan they can say whatever they
mm,
want, which is just completely and utterly wrong. It's like I said, it's like going into a house, going into a crowded concert and yelling fire. You don't do it because it's just dumb. So so now that we've had our rant, and again, I want to take the time and to Kate Dempsey, who had that horrible situation online again.
mm,
I'm sick and tired of this crap. I mean, grow the up, people. Come on,
mm,
grow up. I mean, this is a woman that she has a beautiful family and a beautiful young daughter. Let her live her peace, okay? If you don't agree with her, do me a favor, just move on. It's like social media. I can go onto social media right now and I bet I could find something that's going to offend me or something that I don't like. But you want to know what I do? I don't sit here and I go on a 10-minute rant, typing as hard as I can, getting angry. No, you want to know what I do? Simply flip and move on. Why? Because there should be no reason why something that's typed down by some anonymous person who I may never know should get me that upset. I
mm.
simply move on. It is not worth it. If they offend you, if you don't like it, do me a favor, just move on. So I wanted to take the time. I don't like putting it out on social media because again, there's too much toxicity to the point where it's like if you put something out there in support, then you're going to get 50 knuckle draggers that are going to tell you that you're a
Yeah.
pansy, especially as a male. So I don't waste my time with those people. They're not worth the energy of the time. Again, to the female journos who I know a lot of, Sarah Burt, Marnie Vinyl, some of these that have went on. I love you ladies to death. You ladies are fantastic. Please continue to keep up the
Mm.
work that you are doing. You are magnificent journos. Keep doing what you're doing. Fuck those guys. Fuck them. Fuck them. I'm going to say that. I don't normally like using cuss words on my on my side. I don't mind if my guests do it just because when it comes to it, I like the raw, but I had to say that.
Can I get
Love
I'll
you
get a
ladies.
clean one in. Fuck. There you go. Look, with this, I think uh, I'm a huge supporter of the LGBTQI plus community, and we support the Rainbow Crows as well, and they do a phenomenal job in creating a real safe space for a lot of fans of both the Crows and whether they self-identify with their uh, gender or sexual orientation, whatever. Personally, do whatever you want. Okay. When it comes to how you want to do that. However, when it comes to judging or calling out or putting up photos or anything else like that based on someone's sexual orientation, their race, their religious affiliation, or anything else like that, at the pod, we've decided we don't talk about that stuff on air because it's giving it oxygen.
Mhm.
And uh, when Eddie Betts played for us, the amount of shit that that poor man will get, and even Isaac Rankin this year, the amount of crap he got, and even one of our fucking players saying it out on an SANFL field to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander player, and then doing some weird ass apology video and all that other shit, and the amount of crap that came from that, it was distressing for me running a lot of social channels and seeing like you can't win. like you said. And I feel horrible for what the Richmond AFLW club is having to endure
Mhm.
now because of some fucking idiot. However, on the flip side, I think it's good that there is enough enragement at
Mhm.
this to show that things have changed sufficiently. Um, and I'm not trying to mix this with racial vilification too much, but if you look up the history of, one of the most famous photos in Australian photojournalism, the Nicky Winmar photo of him lifting up his top and pointing at him in '93.
Mhm.
Um, if you look up the reaction in the first 2 weeks after that point, St Kilda were about to delist him because of that. There were Collingwood fans and the Collingwood club that were coming out and trying to really arc up against him. And the AFL itself, basically, I think they won an award from the UN for, saying, no, we're actually going to, bridge some differences here. We're not going to take this shit anymore. We're not going to do this for our ATSI players. Fantastic. Where's that at now from the AFL House? Where's this leadership? It's not, it doesn't exist anymore. And that
Mhm.
was 31 years ago that things happened with the Nicky Winmar incident. And Nicky Winmar, a beautiful man and everything. Yeah. Didn't go too well in the '97 grand final, but did lose his father, I think, the day before too. So, very distressing for all and sundry. But tell you what, for the martyrs that are coming through from the AFL women's side and everything else like that, I don't know why we have to keep putting up with this shit. Like it really does my head in personally. So
Mhm.
yeah, I feel really bad
And,
for
and and several of them I know quite well. I've had Marnie Vinyl was on some of my podcasts early in my AFLW coverage, and
him.
I'm so happy for her progression with what she's doing. She's absolutely magnificent. I
She is
love her to death.
amazing. She's
She's the
amazing.
sweetest person in the world. I've
Yeah.
went back and forth with her several times. I know her being on Broden Kelly's footy podcast has been
Yes.
magnificent for her. Sarah Burt, who I know is done a lot of good things in the on that. Just it has been amazing to meet some of these absolutely fantastic women. I want to support them, and I just want them to understand that as many dickheads as there is out there, there's just as many people that are supporting and behind them just as
Mm.
much. So now that we've had our rants for the day, let's talk a little bit about footy. We got we'll jump to it. We'll skip the one question because I got to get to this. We'll talk about your beloved Crows. I want you to have your time on this. So here's my question for the burning questions: is the Crows again look to be a flag contender? What do
Mm.
they need to do to convince you they are a flag favorite?
Don't fuck up. Now, now that sounds weird, but last year I was at the Adelaide Brisbane. I think it was a qualifying final at Norwood Oval, and you know what we did? We fucked up. We were sniffing our own farts, and we just basically got high of our own supply. I think leading into that game, our pressure was off, and I just really hope that as a squad, and I'm not pointing at any one person whatsoever. And in fact, I'll be complimentary of someone, Sarah Goodwin. I think she was having quite a rough first few games, but has really come on, especially in the shitty compressed rounds part. And genuinely, great work. That's what we need. The fact that we've got Jess Waterhouse who's on the sidelines more often than not because of anything other than the fact that where do we put her?
Mhm.
That's great. I think that's a sign of a very mature squad and culture itself. Now, if we don't win, I'm fine with that because honestly, we've got 3 cups and we've got a dynasty that we've created from literally nothing that I can't be more proud about. Sophie, one of our co-hosts, she did the dynasty top and the
Mhm.
Crom era stuff too, and I love it. I just love the fact that we've got this momentum that we can go into and we can just plug and play some players. We've got Taylor Levy who's come on, and just
Mhm.
none of the players that are coming on too. Even the fact like we interviewed Lily Tarleton. Well, I interviewed Lily Tarleton too, and the amount of skills that she's got in her back pocket. She's only been able to debut this year purely from a there's just no space. But this squad is able to stick together and just ride all this out too. Like that's I work as a nurse practitioner. It is very difficult to keep a roster going like this in an ICU or anything else like that. I can say that much because some people play different parts, some people do different things, that sort of thing. But to keep that together and keep everything cohesive, I've got to give credit to the off-field squad and Matty Clark too, who's now a life member at the Crows too, for all his amazing work. He is genuinely, if something happens to Matty Nix or something else like that, I want him to coach our men's squad. Like, gee, like he's a great coach. He's a
I
fan fucking
100%
tastic
agree.
coach.
And he's one of the most laid back guys I've
I
seen when it comes
know.
to it.
And he's so fucking
He
tall. How can you be so laid back and so tall? Like the
he
Bartons.
never has like I've never seen him with the headset on. He's always just sitting there. He's on the bench. He's in the exchange he's
Yeah.
in the interchange box. He's always chewing some gum or drinking on something, water or Gatorade or whatever. And he just stands there stoic. He never gets rattled. You never see him angry like they show him
Yeah.
on the sidelines. He's very stoic. He'll have the occasional little smile, like if they catch him and Adelaide's done
Mm,
something really well, he'll have the little smile. But he's very stoic. He's very calm. He definitely brings a calmness to this group that I think the group feeds off of because he never gets
mm.
rattled. Like I've never seen him go on a tangent. I've never seen him
Yeah.
angry. And even I watched the behind the scenes doco that they did for
Mm,
or during the pandemic times, and it was the same thing. Like all of the footage with him, like he was very calm. He brought this calming presence to the group, and I think he's been fantastic for you. For me, like I'll hop in here and say it. Like for me to be a flag favorite is just continue what they're doing. I
mm.
think this round's
Yeah.
game will be huge. If you throw the thunderbolt that is knock off more North and be the first team to beat him this year, you go into the finals knowing that you toppled the one team that seems to be the team that can't nobody could beat. So that for me is you topple that giant, and I think you're right back in that conversation. The depth for Adelaide is going to definitely be tested, but I think as you said, Jess Waterhouse can't even get on, and she's absolute ripper for your
Mm.
team. The Crows are going to be there, like a prelim final. I think Brisbane, Adelaide, North, and then somebody, whether it's Hawthorn or whether it's somebody else, it's that prelim. It almost seems kind of like fate. It's the question is
Yeah.
where do you end up and what's your path? Because if you can
Mm.
avoid North as much as possible and only meet them in the grand final is probably your best route to get to a grand final. So, but
Correct.
I agree with you. I think they're right there. There's not much. The biggest thing if they can get just the tiniest bit more healthy, become before finals time, Racket, like I said, this round will be the mega tester. You throw that thunderbolt knock off North, and everything is back as possible. So,
I want to correct you on something, Donny. We don't talk about Thunderbolts here
oh
because
yes, I
they
forgot.
suck. Okay.
Wrong
Yeah,
side of
yeah,
Adelaide.
correct.
My apologies.
We just,
You'll
beat the
throw an
shit out of them.
earthquake. We'll do it that way. All
Oh,
righty,
good.
we'll go to it. I will take over the podcast just the tiniest bit. We do my team of the
Mm,
week power rankings really quickly. Team of the week. We'll start on the fullback line. We have Harriet Cordner of the Carlton Blues and Mira Gervin of the Gold Coast Suns. On the halfback line, we have Hawthorn's Tilly Lucas Rod, Essendon's Maddie Gay, and Collingwood's Ruby Schleicher. On the wings, we have Lucy McAvoy of the Sydney Swans and Brisbane's Orla or Dwyer. In the ruck, we have Matilda Schultz of the Port Adelaide Power. In the center, we see Emily Bates of Hawthorn Hawks, Tanya Smith of the St. Kilda Saints, and Abby Dowrick of the Port Adelaide
bleh,
Power.
them.
Wrong
Yeah.
one, wrong competition. Sorry to all those listening. And the half forward line, we have Eileen Gilroy of Hawthorn, Adelaide's Taylor Levy. Oh, yeah. And then North's Kate Sheelor. And the full forward line, we have Alyssa Bannon of the Melbourne Demons and Adelaide's Caitlin Gould round out the forwards on the starting. On the bench, defender Maddie Guerin of the Carlton Blues, midfielder Richmond's Elise Sharon, North Rocks Emma King, Richmond forward Caitlin Greiser, and utility Adelaide's Anne Hatchard rounds out the team. Had to get Hatchie in there. I think she had a fantastic game this week. So I
Yeah.
know it's a lot of names really quickly. Thoughts on team of the week?
Look, just did a brief count. Crows plays three, Port two. So yeah, fuck Port. Anyway, continue.
So, yeah, it was fun. It was fun though. It was a fun week. It was a fun week of footy. It was fantastic to watch that. So we'll go to the power rankings really quickly. Again, my homage to the fourth and long part of the podcast. At five, the Adelaide Crows. Unfortunately, that loss to Melbourne kind of hurts them a little bit when it comes to power rankings. At four, the Melbourne Demons. At three, the Port Adelaide Power. At two, the Hawthorn Hawks. And at one, still undefeated, still at top of the ladder, North Melbourne Kangaroos. So we've gotten to the fun part of the week, and that is
Mm.
tipping. And as I said, the first two games of this particular round look to be sensational games. We start off, Kazalia Stadium in Cairns sees the Hawthorn Hawks host the Melbourne Demons for the first game of Indigenous round. Cannot wait for this. Who do you like? I know teams, like I said, teams won't come out until tomorrow. Thoughts? Hawks, D's, who do you like?
Look, I'm gonna have to go with the D's, I reckon. And the only reason I say that is because did I say D's? No, I meant Hawks. Sorry. And the reason I say the Hawks is because purely from a pressure point of view, I reckon that's going to be the big thing. It's going to be hot up there, hot and humid. So I'm just looking at the weather right now. That you could hear the tapping just then, 31. So that's what 80 odd Fahrenheit off the top of
Mhm.
my head. Um, and yeah, pretty bloody humid as well. So whether they acclimatize that or not will be interesting. So currently at the moment it's 80% humidity up there, which is a dry season for them apparently. But why the fuck they're playing a game in Cairns? I don't know. I don't know which team sold that one, but yeah,
It's
Kazali
Hawthorne's
Stadium.
home. According to the
Yeah,
website,
it's
it's
Hawthorn home
Hawthorne's
game.
home game.
Yeah.
So
But that stadium sucks. That's all I can say. But yeah, I reckon Hawthorn. Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna tip Hawthorne because as I was gonna say that being up in Kansas, it's gonna be hot, it's gonna be humid, it's gonna be a slippery ball. I think with their run, their pace, and their ability to put it in space and chase after it, I think the Hawks will have a little bit of an advantage. Melbourne tend to be more of a kick mark team. They tend to be more of the structure. They want to keep footy in hand. A little bit more difficult if you've got a slippery football. So unless Melbourne's kicking is absolutely pinpoint and they've got sticky fingers despite the weather, I like the
Mm.
Hawks in this one. That'll be a fascinating one. Friday night footy, Norwood Oval, under the lights. Adelaide Crows host top of the table North Melbourne. Heavyweight clash here. I gotta ask, A, are you going to be able to attend this game? And
Yes.
B, who do you like?
Okay, so I'll be attending this game as well, and going to be taking my daughter as well. So I don't know how long she's going to last, being a 4-year-old. However, um, friend of the pod, Dan Linky, who's a massive North Melbourne fan, has not seen North Melbourne win live in the flesh. He got close last year until Neve Kelly snapped across the body and kicked a goal in 9 seconds. And he has the famous shot of him turning his head, putting his head in his hands,
Hmm.
like, oh my God, another loss. It's going to continue. I think we are going to do pretty well. Is it going to be close? Yeah, but this there's not much you can take momentum wise when both teams, scored in the upper 50s and the other team, barely scored a total of 3 goals between the two sides going into it. It's going to be great weather as well. I'm really looking forward to it, honestly. And I think it's going to be a tough game, but I reckon Crows will get up.
This is one of those, the location is the
That doesn't
reason
help us.
that I'm
Norwood Oval sucks.
but here's the thing though, you play Norwood Oval really well. I think it helps your team out a little bit because it compresses the ground. I think if you're on a bigger ground, if you're playing over at Victoria Park or in Arden Street where it's bigger
Mm,
grounds, it's not as compressed as Norwood Oval. I think it actually would help North. I'm gonna tip Adelaide in this one because Norwood's ground, I think, evens this game out because it makes everything much more contested, which is what Adelaide
mm,
wants to do. And the fact I think North Melbourne are ripe for a loss. They've had a couple of games where they've played not the greatest football and still been able to win. This is a good Crows team. I think they're playing really good football. Like I said, Ebony Marinoff, the sun is jealous because she's just as hot as it. That's how good Ebony Marinoff is playing footy
She
right
is
now.
phenomenal.
Her and Jazzy Garner going one on one will be incredible. Hopefully the footy gods will give us that luxury of watching those two heavyweights go after each other on that one. I like the Crows in this one purely on the fact that it is in Adelaide on the road. North's got to go on the road to get a win. The ground size, I think, will really help this one out. So I'm going to tip the Crows in this one. We jump up to Henson Park as Fremantle fly over from the west to play the Giants. I got the Dockers in this one. As much as it would be interesting to see the Giants pull off a win and
It ain't gonna
throw a
fucking happen.
spanner in the works, I just don't see it happening. So
It's not
Fremantle for
happening.
me on this one.
Hmm. Nah,
Don't even
next.
have to ask. Don't even have to ask. Jump up to People's First Stadium up in the Gold Coast as your bitter rivals, Port Adelaide, fly up to the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast coming off a win over Sydney, Port Adelaide with a win over the St. Kilda Saints. Can Port get a road win and solidify themselves finals time, or can Gold Coast make it two in a row?
No. I reckon Gold Coast will win this one, and I say that purely out of spite. I get the feeling that Port will get found out at some point too. How I don't know, but I hope Gold Coast do it this week. Um,
I I'm gonna I'm gonna tip Port. I think Gold Coast had the perfect opportunity last week to face a weakened Sydney side and still almost lost. And Port, I think, is playing better footy. Matilda Schultz, Lauren Bella is going to be an incredible rock battle.
mm,
That's going to be a fun one. I just think there's more depth for Port Adelaide that can hurt them than on Gold Coast. So I'm going to tip Port in this one, even despite being on the road up in Gold Coast. So, all right,
yeah,
Mineral Resources Park again, host as the West Coast Eagles take on the Geelong Cats. Cats in this one. Daisy,
agreed,
unfortunately, coming off the loss to Fremantle, I think the Cats are playing really good football. They still have a chance to make finals. They need a win, and I think a nice percentage booster could really help them on this one. Cats win this one, and I think by at least 5 goals.
agreed, agreed.
All righty, a
It's,
fun. Go ahead.
no, that's it. Continue.
We got to go to it. Dreamtime TO Stadium up in Darwin as the Essendon Bombers and Richmond Tigers have a women's Dreamtime game up in Darwin. I cannot wait. Hopefully the weather is at least a little bit nice, but it'll be fascinating to watch this one. Who do you like?
Look, I get the feeling that Essendon may bounce back for this one. It wouldn't surprise me with. However, we've got to think about the momentum that potentially Richmond could be carrying into this one too, given all the off-field stuff that's been happening. Can galvanize a team. Can do the opposite as well. Let's be perfectly honest.
Mm.
So, look, just based off of having a bounce back, I'm going to say Bombers.
I would love be this is an interesting one because I think I kind of look at it a little bit like Gold Coast. Like I know Essendon probably the being up in Darwin, there's no home field advantage. It'll be interesting again. This will be under the lights in Darwin. It'll be fascinating.
Mm,
I just think Richmond's style will fit Darwin and the potential weather conditions a little bit better than
mm,
Essendon. So I'm going to tip the Tigers in this one. I think Monconti, slick ball movement, the run and pace,
true.
the big tall forwards of Greiser and Brennan could be a pain for that undersized defensive line for Essendon. I like the Tigers in this one, but it will be a fun one. Dream time up in Darwin. Mara Stadium in Ballarat. Even the women have to play at Ballarat as the Western Bulldogs host the St. Kilda Saints in this one. I'll tip the Saints. But the doggies are just pesky enough. I think they stay in this. I think Nick Del Santo is probably going to be pulling his hair out because I think this doggies team is going to push the Saints all the way till mid fourth quarter. Then I think the Saints talent just a little too much.
This is the worst stadium, bar none. First off, it's in Ballarat. Okay,
You
that
have a
place.
list of the stadiums that you do not
No,
like, sir.
it's
It keeps
we went
growing.
there, oh, mate. We went there. So we as a pod went there last year
I
for the
remember.
Crows versus. Oh, I cannot describe to you how shit it was. It was just shocking. Um, and for that reason, because the dogs usually win their men's or women's squad, I'm going to say the dogs purely for the fact that it is a shithole.
It would
And
definitely
dogs love
ruin
winning in shitholes.
it would definitely ruin the Saints' chances of making finals if that does occur. I can see it happening. I think the doggies have got some
Mm.
good momentum. I just think the Saints hope, but the Saints again have they've struggled the last couple of weeks. We'll have to see, but against better competition. So, the Victoria Park sees the old rivals, not so much in the
Yeah.
women's, but the old rivals take each other on as Collingwood v Carlton at Victoria Park. Interesting one here. I'm going to tip Carlton in this one, but again, I really don't know how to tip this one. This is literally a coin toss because Collingwood
Mm.
is injured, but they still have some of their stars. Carlton is inconsistent but healthy, so it's a really weird dichotomy for me in this one. I'm going to tip
Yeah.
Carlton, but again, this is a coin flip for me. I think either team could win this game.
Yeah, what's the over under on a water mains bursting? Who knows? But anyway, look, I think to be perfectly honest, I'm going to say Carlton for this one.
And then I don't think I'm jumping too far to say Brighton Homes Arena is Brisbane hosts Sydney, Brisbane, and unfortunately, I'm hoping Sydney can keep it close, but unfortunately, this could get ugly quickly if the midfield, if the rock battle gets lost and lost as heavily as it did against Gold Coast, it could be a
Mm.
long day for the Swans on this one, Brisbane, and unfortunately Brisbane big.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with that one too. Sorry, Donnie.
Yeah, no,
That's
you aren't hurting my feelings. This was the one part that when I looked at when we got our
oh
fixture, I
man.
went, "Ew, the last
Yeah.
five games are going to be fun because we play some good teams that I think potentially could be fighting for finals." Now, was I expecting Gold Coast to bomb out after their trade period? I thought they were definitely going to be around there, but
Mm.
again, but this is a tough one. They played Brisbane. They played Brisbane last year, played them tough, but Brisbane ran away in the fourth quarter, and unfortunately, I kind of see it happening again in this one up in Queensland. So, well, Peter, that is it. That is all 9 games tipped. That is this
Mm.
podcast. As per usual, you are an absolute superstar. I love having you on. Really quickly,
Thank you, Donnie.
how have
Appreciate it.
things been going on the Project podcast? I know that you are probably enjoying the women's season so far.
Oh, it's much more predictable than the men's season, that's for sure. Like, bloody hell. But look, we've got a lot happening. This is something I can reveal as an exclusive for you guys, but we'll be advertising it tomorrow morning Australian time. We've got our draft night live that we're doing. Now that it's unhinged. That's the one way to describe it. So that'll be on YouTube and also on TikTok as well. They will be streaming that one. We've got bunch of local radio celebs joining us as well, with Sam Tugwell joining us too, and Laura O'Callaghan from Rudits and Loz, Triple M too. Um, Last year, I had a numb bum for sitting for 3.5 hours doing that live stream, but I've not laughed so much in my life because the AFL draft itself, Donnie, if you really want to have a good nap, just put on last year's AFL draft. It is the it's the antithesis of the NFL draft. It feels like it's being run in a studio, if that, and there's no live audience. It is,
Mhm.
oh, it's bad. But we add frivolity to it by just ripping into it and saying how much the AFL sucks, and it's one of our most popular things we do every year. So that'll be happening Wednesday, November the 20th from 6 p.m. Central Time in Australia. But that'll be well early for yourself, Donny. So don't stay up or have some energy drinks. I don't care.
I usually what I will do is I will watch the draft on replay because the good thing about the Watch AFL app is that they do have the draft
Yeah,
minus commercials the next morning kind of
yeah,
kind of dim down a little bit. They take the commercials out. So it's literally like, we're gonna go to commercial. We're back. And it's like it's kind of nice.
yeah,
The same thing with the games too, which is kind of
yeah,
nice. So I most of the time I watch the men's draft the next afternoon
yeah.
because I do a draft and kind of off-season review show with Peter
Mm.
Williams of RookieMeCentral.com. And he kind of
Yep.
we go through and always have fun with that one. That's always a fun podcast because he knows I'm going to ask about the Swans players. He knows I'm going to ask what are the hidden gems that may have been after round one that may find their way onto an AFL onto the ground in an AFL game the next season. So it's always a
Mm.
fun podcast for me. So I don't usually watch it live because unfortunately it usually starts at about like
Oh,
12:30
Donny,
or
Donny,
1 in the
here's what you
morning.
do though. Here's what you do, mate. You just listen to us. You listen to us. And like we will say who's being drafted, but then we'll point out the fact that, some kids doing some weird gesturing on camera or, one of the weaknesses for someone is height. like, they're 18. They're not going to grow anymore. Like, it is the thing. But look, we're doing the live with our patrons as well. So patreon.com/project. If you want to sign up too, we do a lot of behind the scenes stuff there too, and our pre-rolls and segment streets, which are genuinely unhinged. We are unhinged people on the project, but
But
we're all
you at
friends
least
as
enjoy
well.
it,
So
though. You enjoy
I
it.
love it. I love it. Look, I've gone through a lot personally this year,
I
but it's been it's always good to have a constant as well to know that the men's side sucks and Port somehow will suck just as much, and the women's side just fucking romp it in. Like that's the constant I have in my life. That's for
Well,
sure.
the crazy thing about it this year is the fact that both SA clubs could both make finals in the women's and only one made in the men's it'll be, like I said, it'll be fascinating again. You're one of my favorite listens each week on the Crowjack
Thanks,
podcast.
buddy. Appreciate it.
It's been fantastic. I try to listen to other teams' podcasts just to kind of hear the vibe on it. And I know that
Mm.
sometimes, especially after losses, they're difficult to get through. Like I know I listen to there's a couple of Swans podcasts I listen to, and like there are times I have trouble listening to it after a
Yeah.
loss because
Look, I mean, look,
everybody
yeah,
reacts. It's kind of the same. It's the fandom. It's like there's an emotional reaction sometimes that you
yeah.
can't help not doing.
And that's the thing. Look, I think it's interesting. We've got some fans that have joined us from Arkansas through my work that I do with the ESPN Arkansas radios team. And they've just commented, it's just like, we've got no fucking idea what you're talking about when it comes to the footy stuff. But all the other crap you're talking about is genuinely hilarious. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
well, good. All right, that's fine. Because for us, we're just like five or six friends just trying to get through this. Okay.
Hmm.
And I think, look, even the club itself, they're appreciative of the fact that we don't needle them directly. We'll do it
Hmm.
indirectly, call a spade, but we're
Hmm.
not just actively criticizing versus critiquing. And that's something I've talked about on air too. There is
Hmm.
a difference. And that's something you talked about earlier too. You've got to be, there are some positives, there's some negatives. And if it's a pile of shit, it's a pile of shit. Simple as
You can
that.
be honest and critical and not get after somebody, and that's the one thing
Correct.
that I
Yeah.
and like I said, and my favorite part about your guys' podcast, like I said, is you guys take the Mickey out of each other just as much as you take
Yes.
out of everything, which again is fun banter. I absolutely enjoy it. Like I said, I can't tell you how many times I'm at work and I'm listening to your podcast and I'm literally holding my mouth because I'm trying not to laugh out loud because it's absolutely hilarious. And
Yeah.
each character on the podcast has got their own little quirks, and it becomes this fun little game of who's on the podcast and what do they
Yes.
bring, because each one has got their own little fun part of it. So it is thoroughly enjoyable. I've
Uh,
thoroughly enjoyed listening to the podcast.
Appreciate the kind
Like I
words,
said,
Dominic. That's
to
great.
all the Crows people that I do know, I've said it many times. I said the Crow Jack podcast. If you want a fun environment where they talk as a Crows Nuffy, that is definitely one you got to listen to. So
Mm.
that is going to do it for our podcast. We could talk forever, Pete. It's so much fun talking with you. It is always so great. So that's going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposal. Again, keep an eye out. More women's. We will have draft coverage for both the men's and the women's before I take a tiny break. Do keep an eye out. Again, my off-season supporter series will come in January and February. I'm going to be talking with fans. I have a special surprise. I will announce what the off-season supporter series is this year. You guys are going to love it. I think
Ooh.
it's going to be fun. So that will do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. And we'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.